it is important to do assignment 3 thoughtfully because your practical part of exam will be like that. Assignment 4 is more complicated. It involves cloud, using cloud, and this is why it's not an exam. But you should have some cloud experience in this course because this is the last course using Kotlin in Android programming, and it is native language for Kotlin, currently recommended language for Android, recommended language for native development, but there are other ways to develop Android applications, for example, using Flutter or React Native, but this is Kotlin provides you direct access to operating system functionalities, unlike those other approaches. So starting next week, maybe first lesson next week, maybe second, we will start using clouds, and I'm working on examples, and we will use example provided by Google that is using clouds. Assignment 4 will be similar to assignment 2, but I'm asking you to use cloud to store the data. And remember your assignment 2, when I posted it, I said just spend some time investing in UI, because you will can copy paste all your UI to assignment 4. So, because it is essentially the same requirements except store data on cloud, so you need to rewrite data access layer of your program to store data on cloud. In assignment 2, I asked you to create a program that maintains and edits shopping list. Right? The same will be for your assignment 4, so you can reuse your user interface functions that you created, and data will be stored using this repository, different repository, because you need to create code for repository and also for login to store data on cloud. And definitely it is multi-user, so your program should distinguish data from one person and another one. So shopping list of one user does not overlap shopping list with another user. So this is definitely introduce extra complexity. An example from Google, which is not shopping list, this is to-do list, which is quite similar in idea, shows how to separate data between users. So we can borrow similar logic and apply it to other examples. That example that I'm referring to use a slightly different variant for navigation system. And this, I need to explain that either while explaining that example or separately. So I decided let's have it in separate, since that code is quite large anyway. So let's have it separately, for example, in mass example, another version of it. So we will see how it works in familiar context, and after this we'll see how it works in her example. So she wrote quite reasonable code, second version. First was also not bad, but it was defective in multiple ways. But second version is far better than the previous one. What we're going to do today, we have some discussion left. Remember that the goal was to create a server that provides data to Android application, and Android application grabs the data from the server and use it. So this is what we're going to do today. I have a version of mass trainer program that gets quiz data from a server. I described code of a server at the previous lesson. I changed this code slightly, and the portion that is changed was not explained in class, so we can just flip to that version, because there is no conflict between what I explained last time and what we will use today. So I edited a lot of code in Android side and in server side between today's lesson and last lesson. But it's mostly related to generation of problems, math problems, to make code shorter. Because previously I had fancy ideas how to use inheritance in it, but it ended up with longer code. So I simplified the code in favor of having more Android code, less pure math code, just to save time and to have shorter things. Also, this kind of program should have some reasonable settings, for example, difficulty settings, because currently it has only one difficulty settings, just whatever it comes by default. But if it is trainer, it's probably better just to have different difficulty levels as well. And also functionality, like having several quizzes in the program at the same time, like you want to keep your old quiz and you want to do new quiz. And perhaps new quiz will be with different settings, maybe more problems or less problems, but different difficulty or something like that. So definitely having multiple quizzes per program is the best choice, but currently it's only one quiz per program. Because having multiple quizzes per program will definitely involve more GUI, right? And also it will involve fancier database. Because you will have to have two database tables linked to each other, right? One-to-many or many-to-many. In this probably logical way to do it one-to-many, because when you generate quiz, yeah, okay. You don't share problem between two quizzes because it records your grades. So answering one quiz should not answer another quiz at the same time. So it is one-to-many, not many-to-many. And definitely one-to-many is simpler to code than to many-to-many. So definitely it's one thing to consider. Perhaps it will never happen in this iteration of the course, maybe later. But for this iteration, I want to keep it reasonably simple and invest time into cloud part. And it really depends on how much time left. Because I have pile up in grading already, I have to dig through grading and manage separate tasks at the same time. So where did I go? Why it says exercise? It's probably I clicked it wrong. It is week 1. So when I posted class plan in the first week and updated later, it still shows like a data store and room together. Discuss it in week 9. This is what I'm sticking to for today. I added settings for math program. I didn't add settings for difficulty because currently problems are generated in single difficulty. It doesn't have any differentiation. I added 2 settings to it, you will see. And it is using room for local database. And in the next lesson, I will discuss navigation system that is using serializable objects, similar how she did it in her example for cloud. So it will be smoother transition. Unfortunately, other examples from Google don't do it. So it has to be explained separately. And today, I changed navigation system in Android side in slightly fancier way. It is still the same. I added extra features to it. So what we learned so far helps, and it is just extra feature. This extra feature is optional navigation parameters. So far, we had one required parameter. It is ID of the item where we go. And I added also an optional parameter to see how it looks like. So now we have one optional, one required. And it's not just for sake of adding it. It is like meaningful in the current context. You will see. Unfortunately, we cannot ignore all the navigation system that is using strings in it because most examples from Google are written such way. And I believe it's just only one obvious example where she's using serializable objects. So even in the next iteration of the course a year later, I will have to explain both. So, there is one more thing. Google made a new navigation system for Android. It's already in version 1 beta release. And it is different. So it is something third. We will not, since it's version 1 beta release, we will not use it in this iteration of the course. Just be aware of it. It's coming, okay? And this is why it's probably not a great idea to invest too much time into learning depths of the current one. It's good enough to learn it to the point when we understand multiple examples, because they're not going to rewrite them soon. So when we look up example, we should be able to understand it. But learning this in depth, perhaps it's not a great idea. Just enough to understand navigation with required and optional parameters and how to display stuff. One thing that came up before in our discussion is how to display list and details on the same screen. And I showed hack how to do that. It does work reasonably well, but not perfectly, but it produces result. But I look at up documentation of new system. It supports this stuff better. It's able to display two navigations at the same time, two destinations at the same time. But I was hacking this with single destination. So what is the difference? When it is hacked with single destination for list and details, it needs to refresh screen each time when you select different item, entire screen, because it's different navigation destination. On emulator, it's just perfect. Who cares? It's fine. On I tried real device, like real tablet, plug it in. And on tablet, it's more visible when it is going to different destinations when you click items on the list. It is not slowing down, but it is obvious it's actually a different destination because it goes elsewhere. So it is less smooth on actual device. So it's not a perfect solution. It is a solution, but it's not a perfect solution. Perhaps it's better not to continue hacking it. It's just to wait till new and better way API is released and use new and better API. But that is still working. I put these updates on hold, although I added this extra parameter to show navigation system with optional parameters. But it's a list and details on the same destination. It's a hack. It's not a recommendation. It's just something that works with current API. And you will see. I also changed the way how we save data in local database. I added extra columns to make and rename it columns, rename a data format to make it more explicit, because later I plan to have more than one quiz in the database, so it has to be reasonably well recorded. So it's iterative process. When we write code, we write it to make it work after this way. Clean it up, then add stuff, clean it up. So it is iterative process. So it's not like bad design decision. It's a decision to make it work, and after this, let's make it better, okay? So this is, you will see. So next time, either on the first lesson or next lesson, we will talk to database, and next lesson is more about navigation, but different approach, using serializable objects as destinations. So next, going to, assignment 4 is not posted, but you already know what it is. Starting, it's probably a bad idea because it involves weeks of learning before it's doable, okay? But if you want to learn ahead of the time, yeah, cool, but try not to hack it immediately, because her example shows a good way of doing it. If we try to hack it from scratch, maybe our decisions are not the best. But she invested time into writing. She works at Google, so she knows probably better how to do it. So she invested time into developing example, will plan it, will organize it. So it's better to look through that example before you start doing. Okay? So although you know what is assignment for, do not hack it from scratch. Invest time into looking what she did. I will explain it in class, but if you want to go ahead, fine. Okay? But first, definitely finish assignment 3 before going into assignment 4. Assignment 3 is due this Saturday. And it's also like your practical part of your final exam, so it's important to have good understanding how to do it. So let's, at the previous lesson, we finished with, yes?
Is this assignment due this Saturday or next Saturday? Because it says here the 15th.
It is due when it says.
Okay.
Okay. So if it says 15, it's 15. Okay. I'm not changing dates. Whatever it says, it is. Okay. So it's probably 15th, right? So yeah, you have 1 more week. Cool. Okay. So do not postpone it because you already have all information to do it. Okay. Okay. Let's check it. What says what I put in class plan, like assignment 3 due week 10, yeah, 15th, you're right, week 10, not this week. Right, so let's go back. In previous week, we installed software to run cloud, to run server. If you didn't install it, you cannot run the server, unfortunately, so you have to install that one. But Android program that says branch is using server, it has an option, do not use server. You can still run it, but it will not use server. So at the previous lesson, in week 8, we installed IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. So there is a installation slides, and we spent time in class just playing installation. This software looks extremely similar to Android Studio because Android Studio is based on the same code. It looks even really close. When you run it, it looks really close. In the previous lesson, we cloned code into IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. Cloning process was exactly the same as cloning Android project. It has even the same looking button. Today we will reclone it, but I will assume that it's already installed because installation takes probably like 20 minutes, and that time was already devoted in the previous lesson. So if you didn't install it, either install it right now according to instructions on the slide, or just watch what is going on and install it your free time. You can run Android code that's from the branch that says using server, but it has option that if it cannot connect to the server, it will generate data locally. I put if inside, so if it cannot connect, it's doing local generation, so you can run that project. But of course, it will not use server, and it will not use code to connect server. For now, I want to clone this project again using IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate because it's a slightly different code. And again, the same code, the code that was explained last time is the same. I changed it, code related to generating problems, which is like math logic. And I will change it again later by adding more code like difficulty level. But I will not change what is already explained. Okay. So let's clone it. So we go to mass trainer server Kotlin, and clone is the same. Select code, copy, then you open IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. Next, let's check that In my projects, I don't have a folder with exactly the same name. I don't, which is good. So I clone. I select a place where it should go, projects, PROG, open, Command V, and paste this. Command C, Command V. And clone. So I'm using, you cannot clone it within Android Studio because it's not designed to run server applications. And I trust project. Close, and let's wait till it builds it. It's still building program. Okay, so in the previous lesson, I did overview of this code, and I say that the part said that the part which is interacting with the web, it's controller. This system is called Spring Boot system. It can use Java, and it can use Kotlin and Groovy language to code. So I chose Kotlin because this way this language is familiar to you from this course, and also code which is generating problems is directly copy-pasted from Android, so it is the same code. Okay. So how it works? A request comes to this address, random quizzes. This system is using dependency injection, so it is constructor dependency injection. It has service injected into constructor, and you see this dependency injection system doesn't look like Android dependency injection system, but it is also injected into constructor. And when request comes, it picks number of problems from the request, calls service get random quiz. Now you got quiz, and it sends quiz out to internet. And system converts this object into JSON, and so we receive JSON. So this is essentially what is going on. So, and this is how it was explained in class before. So let's run it and see this magic. Okay. So when it starts, port will be localhost port 8080. It doesn't open browser when you start it, so you need to open browser and go to localhost 8080. So what is displayed here? It is static index.html file that lives in resources static index.html with link to /random quiz in it. When you go to this link, it gives you random quiz for default number of problems 5. You can change parameter for number of problems by specifying it. It's called request parameter. On Android side, it is surprisingly called query parameter. It is the same. Request parameter, query parameter. So how to add it? First you go to this address, random quiz, and put a question mark and say number of problems and assign value, and now 2, and enter, you got 2 problems. So Android side is doing the same. Number of problems is the settings in the program. So it is sending a request with number of problems from the settings. And receive this data according to query parameter, number of problems equal to that. Okay. So what did I change? It changed from it is minor from Android point of view. It is just logic of generation of problems. In the previous versions, I had interface, call it problem. That is essentially any problem that has a text in it as problem description kind of thing. Even biology problem will work, but I decided, okay, maybe it's too much. Okay, let's stick to algebra problem. And algebra problem, it's any problem that has answer as an integer. And I decided, okay, maybe it's too much as well. So let's stick to algebra problem that has two numbers in it, not 3, not 4. So we are kind of simplifying structure. I'm kind of simplifying structure of the program. So now algebra problem has explicit number of numbers, 2. It's not general, any number of numbers involved. So algebra problem is simplified. So in domain, algebra problem is first number, second number, algebra operation. And algebra operation is addition, division, subtraction, and what else? Multiplication. So I said algebra operation is defined as enumeration class, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Since enum, it's enum class, so you can define other things besides constants. So I define it symbol, which is calculated based on what it is. If it is addition, it returns plus, subtraction minus, and so on. So I can generate text of the problem automatically based on two numbers and operation. Okay. And also I can do calculation automatically because I added function calculate. So it can calculate answer. Also automatically when you provide two numbers, it will calculate answer from it. And also I made companion object that can pick character and creates operation. It is for conversion because when data is stored, it can be stored differently. Or when the data is received, it can be received differently. In this program, you see it is engraved from symbol is not used. It is used on Android side. I decided just to keep it the same and copy paste. So on Android side, it's not used. On this side, it's not used. On Android, it is used. Previously, I had separate classes, addition problem, multiplication problem. Now it is all algebra problem. So it is simpler. So two numbers, operation in the same class. That makes code shorter for generating problems and converting between different data types, especially when you go to database, when you receive data from internet. You need to convert, and when you have only one class to convert, it's shorter code. And so that was rationale. And there was no other choices except that simplification. So I provided more details in explanation at the previous lesson. So since it's video recorded, if you're interested, you watch it. Otherwise, you don't really need it at this moment because it's more about Android course, and explanation of this server is more for curiosity. You will have a future course starting in winter that will use the same software, IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. This is why it's a good idea to install. A license is 1 year renewable as long as you have student email. So if you get a student license, it will be good through your winter term, which is coming. And this software probably you will run update, but it will be the same license, so you don't need to register. It is free for students, but when you register, you have to use Sheridan email. This is how they know you're a student. So we can keep it running because Android program has versions that use the server. Questions about that? So as you see, it is providing JSON, and it is running on localhost 8080. There is a little trick on Android side, because we run it in emulator, right, on desktop. So we cannot use localhost 8080 because localhost, it's a general name for current computer. In Android itself, it's current computer. So localhost for your desktop is not localhost for Android. So emulator system provides link between address inside of an emulator, which is localhost of your computer. It has different API, what's this called? IP address. So on Android side, it's not localhost, because for Android, localhost is actual Android. So we need to be aware. And definitely, it's a good idea to host it somewhere on web and just have address connect to web. This way, we don't have to deal with localhost issue. But currently, it's not on web. I didn't put it yet. Advantage at this moment that when request comes, you can see actual message that request received, data generated, data sent. So this way we can see that is actually interacting. Android program is interacting with the server. So this is where we left the stuff at the previous lesson. We didn't actually run Android program that connects to the server. It did work, but I changed this code to make it better. So I used my weekend time for advantage. And also coding yesterday till late night to improve the code. So there are two things that is good to discuss. One is unrelated to current topic of retrieving data. It is navigation system with optional parameter, because we already have required parameter that is optional. So it is separate. And another one, it is retrieving data and data access layer, so it is more interesting. But first, let's do that to fill in the blank in our knowledge about navigation system with parameters. Right? So let's clone that Android program again, because I changed it a lot, so let's clone it again. And again, what was explained, I was not changed. I changed only things that not explained so far, so previous information is good. Okay? So let's clone Android program. Again, it is master trainer Android, code copy, and I want to make sure that I don't have it already. Master trainer Android, I will delete this one. Move to trash. Okay. And Android Studio. Clone repository. Command V. Make sure it's creating folder for it. And we clone. By default, it will go to main branch because it's a default branch for it. Main doesn't have such options connect to web. So currently, it has 3 branches. Actually, there's also no GUI branch, the really old one. So no database also branch, also old one. Main is using database. There is also adaptive screen, which became a little out of date because when I changed it database, in the current version, I didn't change database in that one, but it still works. It's just different database in it. And using server, this is the latest. That has an option to connect to the server, and it also has settings in it. Okay. So let's first go into adaptive screens. This is older one, but I added optional parameter there, and I added also optional parameter in other places. So it is probably a good point to demonstrate that part. What is for? Okay. When I want to run it, I will switch it to resizable because it is for different screen sizes, that one. Also, I will not get conflict between databases because this device was used for older database version. Okay. Does it run? adaptive screens. I wonder why it's not doesn't have option to run. Resizable experimental. Sizable experimental. Maybe it's still building it. I will try to synchronize project. Maybe this will help. Yeah, it did help. Synchronize project. So let's run it. When you run program on resizable, you have an option to have it folded, unfolded, and you also have option what to select. So I pick it foldable, and I run it in close it, so it is folded. Okay. Perhaps I need to push it now. I wonder why it's not showing. Okay, let's stop it and run it again. See, install successfully finished. Okay, but why it's not running? I think I broke it by accident. And I don't know where. So just ignore it. So adaptive screens, ignore it. I broke it by accident. And it's probably too late to find where it's broken. So I will switch it to, I broke it. So I switch it to main, checkout. And I say force checkout. That I broke it somewhere. And I will run main on medium phone. I will fix that resizable, but it's not first priority. Now I need to synchronize it before I run it. So synchronize. Maybe I should clean build. So let's try to build, clean project. And after this, run. Main doesn't have a connection to the server option. It is simpler one. I already changed database structure to it for it. Okay. So it doesn't have a settings option. By default, it is picking, I believe, 20 or something like that. So what did I add it to navigation? Let's open navigation code. UI ABP root screen. Okay. So for the list, I have an option what is selected, and I say, you see what is selected is after question mark and assignment. This is how a navigation system for that is using string is passing optional parameters. And when you do it optional, you specify default value. So when you do not add anything to the address line, it will use 0. So it will give you 0. So this is the idea. As you see, approach is extremely similar to web. Question mark, something, assign it something. Like number of problems, assign it. You already saw it on web. And it is not something by accident. It is by design. Because when the system is introduced, when the system was introduced, it was designed for linking to web. And how? There is an API feature of Android apps. It's called zip linking. These destinations can be used as deep links with extra settings. So you need to specify a description that it is deep link. What is deep link? It is opening one app from another app, for example, from a browser, at specific location. So the design is to make locations openable from a browser. So, for example, user has the app installed on the device, and website related to that somewhere on web has a link. So when user clicks this link, it opens the app at specific location or inside of the app. So it is deep link. It's not specific to a browser. It can be used for linking applications from one specific place in one app to another specific place in another app. When they introduced serializable objects as destinations, it was questioned, what happens to deep links? It appears like, yeah, what's about deep links now? Deep links do exist, even with newer version, is it just put it outside of destination, it's just an extra parameter. So deep links still around, it didn't die. When they started to use serializable object, it is just specified separately. It's not part of the same address. And now they decided to keep it separate but functional. So deep links exist. I didn't add it to the course. Yeah, it's one of those things when you need it, you learn it. Okay, and by the time when you learn it, it will probably be different. Okay. So this is addresses are similar to web. Required parameters are after slash, and optional parameters after question mark. So I added what is selected. So when we go to address and we don't specify this selected something, for example, from this page, I don't know what to select because I click it on home link and it gives me list. What to select, either first one or none. So by default it's 0. Since they number it from 1, it cannot find index 0, so ID 0, it doesn't select anything. So this is how I use it. By default it's 0, it cannot find anything with ID 0, so it selects nothing. So in my home screen, so let's see, home screen, you see, on list click, I go to list of problems without specifying what is selected. So it will use selected 0. So this is why nothing is selected here. See? But when I go to specific problem, like 10, and go back to the list, so this is details. See? So when I'm in details screen, here it is. This is details screen. Problem/ID. See? When I go to details screen, from details screen to list, I say selected, and this is current problem ID. So it will navigate to the list, and it will provide extra parameters. Select current problem ID. So if I go back to the list, current problem ID 10, it will display it differently because I added GUI option. If it is selected, just display it differently. For that item, I have a compose function that if it is true, add frame, add shadow. So here, I see. And it also scrolls this list such way it's visible, because by default, you can go there and it's onto the screen. It's outside of the screen. So GUI is changed such way first. If a particular item is selected, it adds frame around it and it adds shadow. It is just GUI option, a GUI API. Okay. And also, I'm using option for lazy column to scroll it to the position so it's visible. Okay. So if I go here, say it's 13, now it is 13, go here, you see it's 13 selected. Okay. Also like 14, next works, now it is whatever, 15. 15 is selected. And scroll option to the location, make sure that it's visible. So it is two pieces inside of the GUI to display if it is true differently. So it's a flip. It is Boolean option selected, not selected in the GUI. And also in the list, there is option to scroll it so it's visible. Otherwise, it doesn't look nice if you go to this list, something is selected, but it's outside of the screen. Right, so let's see the logic inside of the list. So as you see how it is passed, and remember that parameters can be picked inside of view model, right? You already saw how to pick it from view model. But in this case, it makes sense to pick it outside because it's GUI specific. And it is given to compose function directly. So it's also information how to pick it outside. So you see, when I'm here, in details, I'm inserting problem ID into address line when I navigate to a list. You see? Selected and problem ID. Problem ID is known inside of view model, but somehow I need to either take it out or get it separate way. And I decided that it's easier to get it separate way, not to pick it out of view model. And this is how to pick it separately. You see backstack entry, arguments, get int, problem ID, but if it's not there, it will be using 0. Okay. So this is how to pick data from address line outside of your model, because in this case it makes sense, because by picking this from getting this inside of your model and take it out, it's more work. A view model is still picking it because it needs to display data for current problem. So it's also available inside of view model separately. Okay. So it is one of the changes. Let's open the list itself. Okay. So where's my list? Home, list problems, right? Selected, and I'm picking what is selected here for the list, and I'm passing this number, what is selected, to problem list screen. So now a problem list screen has extra parameter. It will be ID of a problem to show selected. Okay. So problem list screen now has extra parameter, which is selected, and this will be ID of a problem to be selected. Right? And when I display it through a list, through lazy column, still lazy column, problem list item. I say selected, and if current problem ID is equal to selected, it will be true. Okay. So for problem list item, it is actually a Boolean flag to make it selected. So for problem list item at the bottom, problem list item, where it is? Yes, problem list item. I decided, okay, frame color. If it is selected, it is dark gray, otherwise light gray. So frame it looks different, right? And elevation, if it is selected, it is 4 dp. If it's not selected, it's not elevated, so there's no shadow around it. Okay. So for the card, as you see, I'm adding border according to frame color, see? And I'm adding elevation according to this. So I'm adding border and shadow. So this was mechanics behind this selection and using navigation system. When it is a list and details, you will have both actually, because you will have a list on one side and details on the other side. But it's not a good idea to invest time into playing with this hack, because a new navigation system, Navigation 3, which is already in beta and most likely will be fine next time when I teach this course, or next time when you need it, it has an option to display several navigation destinations at the same time. So we don't have to hack around to display list and details at the same time. And what I currently have, it's hack around, because I cannot display more than one destination at the same time. So I combine these things into one destination. So what happens to display data, to store data? So in order to see stored data, we need to go to inspector, right? App inspector. App inspection. User problems. And you see, operation was previously stored as number because I decided to make it character, and by default, character was converted into integer, so it was a number. It was hard to understand what is going on. So I decided to store it as a string. So now it is obvious. I also store correct answer. Previously, it was calculated on the fly. And I'm storing answer status separately. And this is intentional to show how to combine streams, how to combine flows. So another topic for today, how to combine flows. So status, and I added also date. It is update time. It is not shown in the program. Later I will add it to the GUI. And also it is example how to add converters. When I explained converters to you, I made a mistake because I didn't look up current documentation. Previously, it was one class. Now we can have more than one. So we can add more than one converter. So this program shows two converters added intentionally to show that we can have more than one. One converter is to convert date into long. It is typical way to store data on Android as a long, because date in SQL is not compatible to date in Java, so we have to do conversions. And so it is stored as long. And I added additional conversion to convert enumeration type this way to the symbol stored. By default, enumeration type is converted to the name. So by default, if we store enumeration, it will be like whatever is variable or constant name. So conversion is dot name into that by default. So if you want to see the string that corresponds to this constant, you do dot name. Okay? So this is dot name by default, but I did conversion into symbol. So let's see that conversions. Okay. So my database now is storing local problem, which is A, it is first number, this is second number, operation, and you see it is algebra operation. It is not character anymore, so I decided to make it, let's have a fancy way. Algebra operation, it's storing answer, it's storing user answer as a string before, and it's storing status, and this is also enumeration type. Without conversion, enumeration type shows up as actually name of it. This is not converted. This is also enumeration type, but I added converter to it, so it is stored differently. And it also stores date. Date, I added converter to it. So this program has two converters. Converters are mentioned in database. So class, where's database class? Database. So they comma separated here, converters. See? So when I said it can be only one, it was wrong. Either I forgot or they changed it API. You can have more than one. So you just comma separate them here. Okay. So I have a date converter and algebra operation converter. So for date converter, converter is just regular class with type converters. With functions marked as type converter. That shows how to convert it into storage and how to convert it back. So since I want to store date as long, a date object has a property .time that is storing date in long format as number of milliseconds since whatever some time long ago. Okay. It's computer time. So conversion is easy this way. And conversion is back is also you create date object based on that time, and it will give you date object. Okay. And I created converter for local converter for math operation, algebra operation. Okay. My operation, remember, has a property, calculated property called it symbol with this character, but I want to have a string, so I convert character to string, to store it as a string. And how to go back? I remember that I had a from symbol static from symbol function in companion object. So if I want to call function from companion object, I use class name. So from symbol and operation in this case is a string, but symbol is expected to be character, right? So I'm picking first thing in the string, which is that character, because the string will contain only that and termination, right? Possibly zero termination, which is not shown by default in the string. Okay. So this is conversion. This is how it is storing this stuff now. Why did I add these pieces? These pieces are added on purpose to show combination of flows. We already touching advanced topics with flow. At the previous lesson, we learned that we can collect data from the flow explicitly by calling .collect. It was in the example from previous lesson. And today we will see how to combine flows. Why do I touch this subject? Because example from this lady, Google lady, I forgot her name, sorry, who wrote example for cloud example. She's operating with flows fancy way, so we need to be reasonably comfortable with that. So I added this on purpose. So what do I use? Where do I use combining of flows? In score. Previously, score was calculated based on a list of problems. So it was when we retrieve data from the database, it was checking if answer is correct and essentially counting correct numbers in the retrieved list. So this is how it was done before. And now it is done differently to show how to combine flows. So it's for demo purpose. So in my DAO object, and now I have count all It's in integer. It is used only to check if it's empty or not. So it's not used in score. In score, I'm using this. A get problem count flow. This SQL query will retrieve number of problems, right? You see, count all from user problems. And it will give you flow of integers, and it will insert new integer each time when database is updated. This table is updated. And next, another query, get problem count by status flow. So if status is right answer, I will get flow of count of right answers. So when user answer correctly, it will update by inserting new number. Actually, it will update anyway. Even if it is the same number, it will insert the same number again because it is triggered by any update of this table. But the result of the query, as you see, if it is status is given status, we will get flow of that. Okay. So I have two flows. One, it is flow of counts and flow of status depending on provided status. How it can be combined. So this is a new topic. In my repository, I have a local user problem repository that has function here. Score data flow, which is creating flow of score data. What is score data? Score data object is number of problems and number of right answers. So it is data displayed here. Number of right answers and number of problems. So that query, that repository method gives us flow of these things, which is combination of two flows, flow of count and flow of correct answers. Okay. So let's see how it does the magic. Okay. Score data flow, flow of score data, and I'm combining two flows, get problem count flow and get problem count status flow, where status is equal to right answer. Third parameter of it, in this case it's lambda function, and this lambda function is given two parameters, entry from the first flow and entry from the second flow. So it is number of problems and number of right answers. And what is last one in this lambda function is inserted into the flow which is created. So it is quite straightforward combination, right? You have two flows. You have lambda function given two parameters, one item from each flow, and you call constructor to create item to result in flow. And flow on the given dispatcher, and dispatcher by default it is dispatcher IO, so it is doing the combination. Execute this combination in the dispatcher, say, design it for input-output. So this is how it works. Can we combine other things? Potentially yes, but I'm not using this in GUI at this moment. Perhaps maybe some other pop-up dialog show more data, whatever, or when I click on this, maybe more information, like kind of pop-up showing from the bottom more information. This would be number of right answers, number of not answered problems, number of wrong answers, and also calculated things, number not answered, so on. So it is the same idea, but extended to more flows. Potentially useful, but I didn't use this part. I use it as this piece, score data, to display this as this item. Okay, so in this core, so it is UI score, I have U model, and you see I got state flow of score data, repository get score data flow, and this thing is displayed in the GUI directly. So this code is a lot simpler now because logic is done elsewhere. Previously, I had to run loop to calculate number of correct answers in view model, right here. I had the map running a loop through the list to calculate number of correct answers. Now it is database is doing it. So this is extra information how to that we can combine flow, but it is flows, and it is not the only operation for flows. It's huge API for many different bells and whistles. So we'll look up when we need stuff. Okay. Flow is extremely flexible with many options. Next. And this version is without settings and without access to external data. So I will stop it and I flip it to, okay, trust, okay. And I flip it to using server. Using server checkout. Say force checkout, and I need to synchronize because it's using different libraries. And this version has a settings screen because number of problems is selectable now. It's not just hard-coded one. And also it has an option in the settings to either use locally generated data or from the server. This is why you can run it even when server is not running. Before we dive into explanation, I want to go into theory a little bit. So let's go to week 9 and to look at this part. Guide to APP architecture of data layer. Because our data layer becomes fancier, more fancy than previous problems, right? So let's talk about architecture of data layer. Okay, there is some nice video. Okay, so it tells that data layer is, in simple scenario, it is a repositories and something else that repository is using, call it data sources. Some Google examples create specific classes called data sources wrapping this stuff. Some examples don't. I typically do not do it. So I don't create extra wrapper data source around database class. So I just have database, use it by repository, or DAO use it by repository. But some Google examples also create data source class. What about repositories? Repositories can use other repositories when it is necessary. For example repository is using two other repositories that could be dependency injected into given repository. For example, in order to access data from web, you need to log in, so perhaps you need to have a login repository related to web access repository, something like that, or web data repository. So potentially you can have several repositories injected into each other. Okay? Of course, not in the circle, but in some sensible way. So dependencies cannot be like a circle, right? So what is, okay, in this case, we have some remote repository and local repository. So perhaps this program is getting remote data and inserting this locally. Similarly to math problems, getting problems from a server and insert this locally if we enable such version. Okay? And as you see, the example repository is receiving 2 as the parameters. So if we use dependency injection, so they inject it into constructor. So repositories could be multi-layer. So this is what was explained. Perhaps could be login repository, a registration repository related to user repository. So today we will see multi-layer repository in mass example. Okay. And what is offline first? Offline first means create a copy locally, get online, create local copy, and use data from the local copy. So this is why it's for offline first. You go online, get it, make offline copy, and first thing you make a copy. After this you use offline copy. So first you create offline copy, after this you use it. So when it happens, there is an explanation how to deal with it. And it's here it is, offline first. Here it is. You have a local data source, you have network data source, and one repository combine, get it from a network and put it into local, which is similar to what will happen in mass example. We go on server, put it locally, and we use it local copy from the database. So this approach is called offline first. Okay, there is a discussion for data store and work manager. A work manager is a specific API designed to run tasks either periodically or just running tasks that is long. You start it and you do something else, it goes in background. And this is a separate good topic, but I'm not touching this at this moment. Okay. We should talk about it. It's perhaps later. After we finish cloud, we will look in work manager. I do have a code for that, but perhaps it needs to be revisited. I wrote an example using it. There are other things besides it. This is really, say, useful to look through if you have time. For example, in navigation, you can just learn about different systems, and this is information about coming in upcoming navigation 3 that is beta version now, and perhaps next year it will be good enough. So looking through this stuff helps, but do not invest too much time. It is just for general ideas what is going on. So it's probably a good time to have a break because it's about midpoint. And after the break, we'll look into implementation of this idea in mass example. When we have several repositories linked to each other, how program retrieves data from a server, puts it into database, how it's doing this magic. Okay. So let's have a break, and after break, we will look at implementation of this data layer with multiple repositories. Okay. So restarting after break. Before break, we discussed data access layers that it can potentially have several repositories that combine data and work together. So this is what this example is about. We have several repositories and data access layers that work together. So let's run this program and see what it is doing, because it has extra feature in it. It has settings in it. The branch is using server. Okay. I added button settings here, and this is making picture is already cluttered. Perhaps the better design is have different arrangement or have some drawer navigation from the left. I decided, okay, let's make it work first. After this, I will care about making this pretty. So I just added extra button for settings, just to keep it simple for now, because it was already late night when I was finishing it. So settings button takes us to settings. And in the settings now we have an option to select number of problems. By default it is 10. And you can change it to different one. And there is option to select, to generate it locally or ask server to give you data. Currently settings has two options, a number of problems and way to generate the data. So this is why I said you can run it even without server this way. And even if you select a remote, and it cannot connect, it will use local one also. Unfortunately, it does not give information to the user that is using local one. It displays warnings in the logs, but perfect program would notify user as well that it cannot connect. So that part is missing. So it is not telling user that it's using local when it cannot connect at this moment. A good idea is to have some kind of pop-up so user knows that it cannot connect to server. So let's look at this logic. In order to do this part, I added data type called in domain. I added data type called problem generation, perhaps say problem generation location, something like this. But this is worthy, so I decided, okay, let's keep it short. Problem generation that could be local or remote. So this is what I have here, local or remote. I also created an object to store settings. That object, I call it user preferences. Where's that? Here it is. User preferences are storing number of problems and problem generation settings. Remember that in the previous lessons we learned that we can store settings as key value pairs, and there is an option to store object as an object, not as key value pairs. But in this case we need to use special compilation settings that involves compiling proto files in some intermediate code, not intermediate, some Kotlin code, and program is using that Kotlin code. We discussed that at the previous lesson that this is not shorter and easy way of doing it, for sure. And it appears like, to me, it's kind of broken way. So there is an easy way to go around is to store pairs separately and create objects after that. This is what I did it as a demo here. These objects stored as a pairs, and repository is creating it from pairs. It is not my idea. It is based on one of the Google examples that is doing it. So I have a settings repository to store this object and update it separately. So let's see. It is called user preferences repository. And that is receiving injection of data store object. So it is using data store object to store data. So where this data store object is coming from? It is coming from data store folder, data store module. Data store module is creating objects necessary for dependency injection. So I have a provides function that is receiving application context and is creating data store of preferences by calling this API call. So this is where data store of preferences is created, and this will be injected into constructor of preference repository. So let's go to that preference repository, user preferences repository, and you see this is where injection happens, inject into constructor as this data store object. What does it have inside? it has a method get user preferences flow that give us flow of user preferences. This is what my program is using. But my program is also using get user preferences as just suspend function call to initialize it. So I borrowed this idea from Google example. If we call first function called first on flow, it will create suspend function that will give you one item, and it will not be called again. So it's one-time data retrieval. I use it to select this according to current preferences in data store. Okay. So it is initialization for this part. I call this one. So what else do I have? I need to, this is just returning private value created here. So let's see how it is created. This is a copy-paste code, except previously we had Boolean. After this I had integer. Now I have combination of two. I'm storing integer and string. I decided to store that enumeration type as a string. Another option is to store it as integer, because enumeration type can be easily converted to integer or to string. I decided to convert it to string. Conversion to integer is ordinal method. I believe it is ordinal method. Dot ordinal will give you integer number that match count from in this list. Right? The first one will 0, second will be 1, and so on. If you call dot name, it will be just a name of this item as a constant. So I decided to call dot name to store it as a string. Since I'm storing two key value pairs, so I need to have two keys. One it is for integer, one it is for string. So now I have two. Next, I need to create an object which is flow of user preferences. By default, it is flow of preference objects, which is not user preference. It's some internal key value pairs object. So this is our flow of preferences. See, these preferences. And map is converting it. But first, I'm catching exception if something goes wrong. For example, cannot open file, something like that. Right? So I'm catching exception. And if it is IO exception, I'm emitting error, but it's not crash, because exception is code, and I'm inserting empty preferences into the flow. So even if it cannot open file, it will insert empty preferences. Now we have a map. Map is converting preference object, which is key value pairs, into the object that we want. And what I want user preferences object. So first I retrieve number of problems. And if it is null, because it's not stored yet, it could be null, I'm using Elvis operator to insert, to use default number of problems, and default number of problems at the top it's 10. So when you start your program, it will start with selection 10 because of it. Because file does not contain anything, this will return null, so it will, instead of null, it will use 10. What about problem generation? Okay. The same. I pick it here. It could be null, and if it is null, it will not call let because it is question mark, right? How question mark works? Question mark dot. If it is null, do not call this function. Make everything is null, right? So result will be null, so it will use default problem generation, which is local. So default user preference objects will be 10 local. But what if it is retrieved? If it is retrieved value will be string because it is stored as a string. So I need to convert from a string to value of enumeration type. And conversion is dot value of, and you give it a string, it will give you actual enumeration object. Value of it is built-in conversion for enumeration type. From a string that represents name to actual value, which is enumeration type. As you see, I'm using a .let. It is scope functions that we explained it in the beginning of the course, and we successfully forgot about them. Now let's talk about it. Okay. So how let works? It defines it inside of it, which is the object on which it is called. So it is string, since this part is returning string. Okay. And last one, we have two values. I'm calling constructor. So map will convert preferences object, which is key value pairs, into user preferences, which is data class. That will have number of problems inside and the way flag how to generate it, local or not local. So this is magic of this user preferences repository. Where does it go? It definitely goes to this screen, right? So this, let's look at that, because this is where stuff happens. And this is part of the navigation, so I added destination for this screen. Let's go there. App, what is this? App root screen. And now has destination, call it settings. Okay, destination settings. That displays settings screen. And this settings screen should react on help button, this one, opening help. So on click help, it is flipping show dialog. Okay. And on home click, this button, it's called navigator, navigate to home address. So when I click on this, it goes to home address. So this is how navigation set up for settings screen. Okay. So let's look inside of the settings screen. Settings has settings view model and settings screen. So settings screen picks view model from health view model in dependency injection. Okay. So let's see what happens inside of this health view model, settings view model. Settings view model definitely needs a user preferences repository in order to connect to the settings. So it receives user preferences repository as dependency injection. Right? Inject constructor with user preferences repository. Right? UI state, it is state flow of user preferences. And in this case, it's easy, no need to convert, because I have a method called get user preferences, which is exactly as flow. But it is flow, not state flow. State in function is converting any flow into state flow. And it requires initialization. We could just use some fake settings right here, but I decided to call get user preference to give another value. Since it is compose function, since it is a suspend function, it needs to be called in coroutine context. So I decided to use the same approach around blocking as it was used in Google example for settings, for user preferences. We discussed that in class. So I decided, okay, I will probably just either assign something myself, like 10 right here, or do what they tell. So in this case, I decided to do what they tell. In number of dice, I just assigned it 3 by default. I didn't bother to retrieve it from settings to initialize it. Okay. Now I need to update settings, stored settings when I manipulate UI, right? So I have save number of problems that is launching update user preference repository, save number of problems, given number of problems. So this is how it goes from GUI into repository. In save problem generation, the same. View model scope, launch, save the same. When save happens, new data is inserted into the flow and UI is updated from the flow. So there's no explicit update of UI because we have a flow connected to UI. So data goes into data store, and data store is reflected to UI. So this is the approach. The same approach is used in Room, right? We send data to database, and database is reflected to the screen using flow. The same is here. This flow to show stuff on the screen, and this is to save this into data store. So in my settings screen, I get view model, and UI state is, you see, collected state. This is flow. And now we have a state that is triggering screen update. So why do I have setting screen and setting screen body? Only for sake of preview. Because if I have a view model in this function, preview would not work, unfortunately. It's not supported. Okay. So preview can be done if you know view model here. Okay. So setting screen is receiving the data, and you see, I pass it lambda functions. Column, double column is converting function into lambda function because setting screen body expects lambda function calls. After this is just UI magic. Right? I have a scaffold that connects toolbar on the top bar, and I have a column that has number of problems input. Logic for this number of problems input is similar to number of dice input, right? I just copy-pasted that code, but I had to add a little bit more logic to that. Because number of dice input was 1, 2, 3, 4, it was easy to convert to from index because it is index plus 1. In this case, it's not index plus 1 because this thing is 5, 10, 15, 20. So I decided that let's create a list of things which is displayed. So it is not like increment of 5 because just you can do any list here. And after this, I did conversion from index to these numbers, which is easy because it is just index of this list. And list of what is displayed, it is this one. You see select options, choices map, number from this one, which is join of two things, number and string resource problems. So this is how these drop-down items are generated. After this is copy-paste from Google Code. I look it up how to do drop-down list. Okay. This part is copy-paste from, I remember in the beginning of the course we had a tip calculator example, and it was 3 choices for service quality. Excellent, good, and okay. So I copy-pasted that code, and I made 2 choices, local and remote, by just renaming stuff. So I didn't bother about syncing. Especially it was after 10 p.m. already, so I decided, okay, I will copy-paste. So, okay. And rename it things. The same logic is already explained in tip calculator, ready button logic. And this is just link back. So this is how settings picture is done. Okay. Now, how data generation is going on? Data is generated by button on the home screen. So let's go to the home screen. Home screen, view model is doing that. You see, make new problems. If repository is empty, insert generated user problems from the repository, and repository is user problems repository. As you see in this code, we don't specify where to generate, and we didn't specify how many of problems. We just call repository insert generated user problems, and repository empty and insert generated user problems. How do you know? How does it know how many problems, and how does it know where to generate? The reason is that how does it know? The reason is that user problem repository receives preferences repository as dependency injection, so it knows it. Because user preferences repository is a dependency of user problem repository. So I'm combining two repositories into one. Similarly to what is discussed in architecture guide, because sometimes we need to combine it for simpler UI layer. So logic is going where this stuff is close to each other, right? So let's open that user problem repository and see that. In the repositories, user problem repository. Here it is. Since it needs to insert data into a repository of database, right? So it has local user problem repository and random quiz repository. It is for data generation. What is missing? One second. It's not injected here, sorry. It is injected into a random quiz repository. In this case, I have random quiz repository and local user problem repository together. So I have 3 layers. Okay. So when we call insert generated user problems, we call local user problem repository insert algebra problems, and random quiz repository knows how many. So it is injected into random quiz repository. Because I don't need this information here, only random quiz repository needs to know. So information is on as needed basis. Okay. So let's go into random quiz repository. So in random quiz repository, I have a local random quiz repository to generate it locally, a remote random quiz repository to get data from server, and user preference repository to know how many problems and where to get them. So when I call get random quiz problems to receive algebra problems, I have a switch. Okay, user preferences, this one. First I get user preferences. It's also, I use it here, that static function, right? Static function to get user preferences. And then user preferences number of problems given here. So I know number of problems. Then problem generation switch. If it is local, call get random quiz repository, get random problems for this number of problems. If it is remote, now I did something naughty because I logged error, logged warning without telling user. in perfect program, it will notify user about it. So what did I do? Try a remote repository, get problems. And if it throws exception, for example, it cannot connect, we're in catch. So I log warning and I use local one instead. So this is how it behaves. So even if we select a remote and it cannot connect, it will use local one because it throws exception, it catches exception here and use it local instead. Right. So this is how data is generated, either local or remote, and user preferences repository tells it which one to use. So let's see. Logs are displayed at the bottom, log cat. So let's clean this, clear log cat. And there is also logs on this server. So this is a server. And logs on here in run. So we go to run. What is this run? And there's logs. So let's clear this piece. Clear all. Okay. So by default, it is local. Right? So, okay. No, now it is switched to remote. So let's switch to local, go to home, and generate number of problems. So make, so this, I believe that it was 20, right? So let's see in settings. Yeah, I selected to 20. So I got 20. So let's switch to 10. Make new problems, so code 10. So for local it works, right? And now let's go to settings and switch to home, go to settings and switch it to remote, 10 problems. Okay. So, okay. Now I go to home, make problems. You see what happens here? Get random quiz, received get request, number of problems 10, generated 10 problems on the server. So the server received response, created 2 problems and sent it back. Sent 10 problems and sent it back. And I got these 10 problems. Okay. Next, let's change it to some other things like settings. Also, I keep remote and I change it to, for example, 5. Go to home, make new problems, 5. What happens here? Received get request, number of problems 5, created 5 problems, sent it back. See? So it is interacting and logging here at the bottom. So bottom line, it works, right? So what happens if I stop server? Okay. I stop at server so it cannot connect. Remember, it is catching exception, right? If it cannot connect. I'm going to home and I say, make new problems. This is my log. You see, could not connect to server, generated problems locally. So it made it local instead. So this is the logic of it. Okay. Now let's see how it receives the data, because I didn't explain receiving part yet. First, let's run it again and see what kind of data actually is sent. See, it's an object that contains number of problems, and we have a list of problems in it. Okay. So I need to create a classes that describe the data. Luckily, the same classes were used to send data from the server side because it's a Kotlin language, so I could copy-paste them. Right? Where do I have this? In my Android program. So where is Android? It is here. Okay. So let's find them. In my data remote, I have a description. It's called algebra quiz. What does it have? Number of problems, a list of algebra quiz problems. So you see, algebra quiz is matching this data. Okay. So I created the one outside. Now I need algebra quiz problem to match this piece. So my algebra quiz problem has ID, text, and answer. So I created Kotlin classes to match received data, and they are marked serializable because I'm using serialization and serialization of Kotlin to create those objects from received data. So this is, I need to, in order to receive data, I need to describe data in Kotlin serializable classes. So this is what I did. I created Kotlin serializable class for entire piece, and I call it this algebra quiz, and I created class algebra quiz problem, this one, for this site. Definitely I need to convert it into other classes. This is what I received, and I need to convert it later. But let's see how it was received. So in order to receive it, we have to, using Kotlin serialization and retrofit. So I need to create interface that describes interaction. So I'm sending GET request to this address. You see, random quiz. That was address here. You see, random quiz. Random quiz. This one, prefix, localhost 8080, is described outside. It's described in retrofit model, and please notice that it's not localhost because it's on Android device. Localhost for Android, it is Android itself. It is special address assigned by emulator to localhost of the computer where it is running. Okay, so it is 10022 and port is the same, 8080. So this is copy-paste from previous example to create a retrofit object and create API based on the API what we had. Okay. Random quiz API. So please notice that this random quiz API now has a query parameter, number of problems. This is the first time when we have query parameter, right? Number of problems, and it is given after question mark. Okay. Number of problems, which is integer in this case. Okay. So this random quiz API object is created by retrofit module. This one, you see, create based on the API, it will create implementation object. And this will be injected into a remote repository, right? So I have a remote random quiz repository receiving random quiz API object. But what it will get? It will get a data not in the format I want to store in the database. So I need to convert. It receives algebra quiz problems, but I need to convert it into other formats because it receives problem as a string. See? So I need to split text into A, B, and algebra operations. So why do I do it? Of course, I could avoid that. I'm just showing that sometimes with the data that we receive, it's not matching the format that we want. So we need to convert. Okay? So it is artificial problems that I resolved. I created this artificially to show that sometimes we need to convert, so here it is. Example when artificially sent in the format that we don't want, and so I'm converting it. Okay. So I receive a problem as a string. Now I'm splitting this into first number, operation, second number, and I'm creating algebra problem based on these three parameters. Okay. So this is conversion, and this conversion operator is applied here. See, we receive it random quiz. Quiz has field problems, so quiz.problems, it is a list of algebra problems. I'm going through a list of algebra problems, using map operation on the list. So map it is a method of function of list that picks problem of item of one list to create another list. So problem is this item from the given list, and I'm converting this to algebra problem, to create algebra problem list. So this is how it receives and processes the data. Next, it is to insert it into the database, because what is received is inserted right here. See? And we already saw that code, right? Where it was local, it was user problem repository. Okay. We have local database, and this is creating a random one. So what did I do? Empty and insert generated user problems. I'm calling local one, empty and insert, and random quiz repository, get random quiz problems, so they will be inserted. All right. So this is the logic behind combining it. Definitely it is not the easiest logic, but it's definitely one of these way to illustrate several repositories working together, right? And also a way to illustrate that architecture guide that shows sometimes we need to combine repositories and to make it work. So that is demo, and definitely it's a demo. Yeah, it works, and perhaps we, in order to make it better, we can have difficulty settings. It will be also entry into entry into user preferences, like difficulty settings. But if we have difficulty settings, we need to generate problems according to that difficulty, and not just have an arbitrary setting that does not affect anything. So it is extra work to think about how to create problems of different levels of difficulty. Currently, it is whatever, right? It's creating problems that we can calculate without going nuts. But perhaps the current level, it is the highest, because it's probably on the edge of what we can do comfortably. So further, it is to have simplified layers. So for example, this difficulty is 10, to create logic for other difficulties, how to make it smaller. Possibly just to have smaller numbers in them, right? I don't have a good idea for now about it, so please postpone it. And definitely next thing is when we discuss clouds is to store data not locally but on a cloud, like user answers. So user can start quiz on one device and continue from another device. So this is a logic. Or return to this quiz problems on another device. This is a logic for using cloud to share data between different users, but in this case for the same user, but for different devices. Now we have about 1:13, and we have plenty of time left. Right? We have more than half an hour left. So let's use this time productively, like work on assignment. If it's not finished, please work on that. I'll be here in case if you have questions. It's enough theory for today. It's already a lot. For the next lesson, I want to clean up navigation. First of all, there is no back button here. It needs to be a back button here in navigation. I will fix that one. And a major task for next lesson is to use navigation with serializable objects. Because example from that lady from Google is using serializable objects in the navigation system. So I'll create a branch for that piece. I will not merge it into the current one, because next time when I teach this course, I will probably have to explain older one as well and new one, because I don't think this new will replace it by next time in all examples. So it will be two. Similarly to you, all right? So now it is almost 1:15, right?